So welcome to all. In 1 minute, we're gonna start. So welcome to all. Okay, let's start. So, welcome to all to this event. I'm Domenico Vito. I'm coordinator of the Climate Social Forum, and this event is made together with Gili Navo, Giving Life to Nature Volunteers from Ghana. The topic of the event of today is the role of government, private institution, and civil society in the ecosystem management in the world. Basically, the role of that also the civil society itself can have, especially in addressing the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and biodiversity loss, and what concern the ecosystem management. We have like a very interesting panel of speakers today, and I will gonna introduce soon them. We will like they have different expertise starting from youth, from communication, from climate activism and so on and so forth. We wanted to render into this session properly the idea on how diverse and how we can say also complementary can be the different action of different stakeholder into the ecosystem management. So, without further ado, I just want to recall that this event is an official event inside the London Climate Action Week. You know that since a few years, this initiative of the Climate Week has raised a great momentum in different cities. We decided this year to propose this event into the London Climate Week, that of course is a very important hub in terms also of climate finance, that is very, of course, connected to the ecosystem management. And so let's start with the event. I want to give the floor first to our first guest, that is Barbara Monticelli. She's like an expert in youth engagement, especially, for example, on negotiation on climate. And with her, we want to like address how it's important to engage youths also into the ecosystem management. So, Barbara, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for being with us. Please.
Thank you so much, Domenico. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for having me here. Domenico already introduced me. More specifically, I'm a PhD student focusing on communication and youth involvement in climate negotiations and governance, but I'm also working for Earth Day and Education International, focusing on climate education. So yeah, today I would like to highlight the important role of youth and why. Let's start for why. Well, first of all, we all know that youth is the most impacted part of the population by climate change. Of course, we are those that will have to handle the climate crisis also in the future. And despite this, we are still underestimated from many perspectives, and there are still many barriers to the inclusion and actually to make us be effective as much as we can in different processes. But talking more specifically about the ecosystem management, why youth are so relevant? Because youth, if you think about this, youth can be the part of the population that can actually bridge a link among the traditional knowledge and the innovative perspective of managing ecosystems, especially if you think about indigenous communities, so indigenous local communities. Therefore, their inclusion must be ensured. And their inclusion, starting from a local level to an international level, starts from a very young age through climate education. Um, Climate education is literally the tools through which we can be powerful and we can fight the climate crisis, and we can bring more innovation, more resilience into the ecosystem management field. Currently, climate education in many countries is still not included into national curricula. Therefore, there are many informal programs, let's say, and here I would like to connect a little bit the broader perspective of what this session is about, meaning the involvement also of the public and private sector. Indeed, as for many other fields in the climate change crisis. Also, in order to be effective in the ecosystem management, collaboration among different areas is highly needed. Indeed, focusing also from a perspective, a communication perspective, which is fundamental because clearly youth can have access to different education solutions and also opportunities to participate to specific initiatives through an accessible, transparent, and targeted communication, which currently is a bit of a problem, especially if we look at it from the institutional perspective. We can see it in national governments. We can see it in bigger institutions, UNFCCC included. Unfortunately, many times the language is too technical, so it doesn't engage. The correct channels, for instance, social media like TikToks and Instagram are not that much used. Sometimes there's also a problem of lack of authenticity in the long-term discourses that institutions make, saying, yes, we are including youth and we want to empower them, but then this is not actually seen in practice. Okay. Um, and so having a very accessible communication is fundamental in order to have effective ecosystem management. And of course, the intergenerational also issue must be taken into account in this perspective, which is a problem that we still have in not just in the climate governance, in many different kinds of governance and policymaking processes, but specifically in this one. And we can see this also at the climate negotiations at COPs, at Bonn. If we have a look at the parties involved at the tables of the negotiations, you can count the youth on the hands of on the fingers of one hand. And this is also due clearly to capacity issues and barriers, financial barriers that enables youth to also be in person where these conferences take place. From the private perspective, the private sector is the one that can support the most in terms of financial capacity. In the ecosystem management, usually the private sector is mostly seen as an exploiter of ecosystems. and for a reason. But we also have to recognize that it can share a great technical expertise, as I said, financial capital, and also innovation capacity. This can be also supported by the side of academia, especially in order to develop specific training program, and to develop also youth research. That is still underdeveloped in many different climate areas. Yeah, I want to finish to conclude the discourse with one of the main problems that we have right now that is impacting many different fields, and it's linked to youth and communication, which is the problem of misinformation and disinformation. Indeed, especially the private sector, but also for what concerns institutions, youth perceive a lack of trust in this, and due to communication that is not that transparent and so linear. If we look at the private sector, there's always the famous greenwashing, of which we talk about a lot, and now this problem of disinformation is really attacking the effectiveness on youth, also because youth are the most using social media and basing themselves on the word of mouth, on peers, and so also to sources that are always not that much reliable. So all this to say that in order to empower youth and include them much more in the ecosystem management in different levels, we need a collaboration from different stakeholders. We need much more accountability. We need much more transparency and support from different perspectives to support them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you for really your experience and also your you can say knowledge about the engagement of youth into this complicated process of ecosystem management. But it's important to stress this point because I mean, youths are the citizens of tomorrow. This is not just rhetoric, but we have to remind that without engaging them, we cannot pursue even sustainability at the long term. No, so very important also your words and your point, Barbara. And Barbara, you mentioned about the use of social media, the use of communication, and also communication nowadays in the worlds as we are living today is a very important asset, a very important sphere that we have to consider also when we are talking about climate and when we are talking about engagement also of youths. Just to remind, you mentioned Bonn. In Bonn, there was a proper like a secretary event on the integrity of information on climate that it was held properly by the Secretariat and hosted by Simon Steele itself. So on that, I want to give the floor to Stefano Cisternino, that is an expert in communication, and also he analyzed a lot the role of information and misinformation into the climate sphere. So, Stefano, thank you very much for being with us, and I give you the floor.
Uh, Thanks a lot to Domenico, and good afternoon to you all. So yeah, I'm Stefano Cisternino. I work on climate and environmental communication with a specific focus on climate disinformation. At the moment, I lead a team on circular economy for ICLEI, that if you don't know, it's the biggest network for sustainability at the local level in the world. But regarding the topic of this session, I will say that my focus is on how we talk about climate and biodiversity, and more importantly, what happens when we talk badly or not at all. So I started in institutional communication, writing policy briefs, producing reports, supporting the Green Deal rollout at the European Commission. I worked for different DGs, and over time, I began to feel a growing disconnect between the messages we were crafting and the public conversation happening outside our walls. And this is evident in whatever context you find yourself. The result is always outright rejection. Sometimes it's confusion, sometimes it's just enough doubt to stall support, delay implementation, or push communities away from engagement. And the problem is that we often respond too late and in the wrong way. But at the time a false narrative is spread, a fact check isn't enough. And a lot of realities, including institutions, they base a lot of their strategies on just fact checking. People don't just want correction, they want clarity and they want to know who is to trust. That's why part of my work now focuses on pre-banking, not just reacting to disinformation after it spreads, but explaining in advance how manipulation works. And so in this case, we show people the patterns, so cherry picking, false balance, emotionally loaded framing, and it makes them more resistant to all these different challenges. This is done through a parallel project. There is the Observatory on Climate Misinformation that was recently created. So I will talk about some different areas that I think it's important to tackle. And the main question in this case is, how do we protect nature when the very idea of nature protection is under attack? So today I would like to explore 3 ways we can respond to that. First, by recognizing how ecological disinformation works. Secondly, by changing the way institutions communicate about biodiversity. And third, by building real public ownership over ecosystem governance. So not just consultation, but co-responsibility. So for what concerns ecological disinformation, and in general disinformation, this is something that also Barbara mentioned, but the reality is that what we are seeing right now is a systemic problem, meaning that it's embedded in the communication coming even from the institution. Policies are defined by components of disinformation. So we're not talking about climate denial, but something more subtle, and in some ways more dangerous. In the last few years, we've seen targeted attempts to undermine biodiversity policies by framing them as threats. Threats to farmers, to landowners, to rural tradition, even to the concept of freedom itself. These aren't just isolated posts online. There are organized campaigns, often amplified by political figures, interest groups, and fringe media outlets. One example that I think is quite relevant. So I worked during 2023 for the Director General for the Environment for the European Commission, and I found myself dealing with the nitrogen protest. And my role was press and crisis communication. And what we saw was a rapid shift. What began as a debate on emission ceilings quickly became a cultural flashpoint. Disinformation turned policy targets into a narrative of betrayal, that Brussels was trying to shut down rural Europe. These narratives work because they are emotional. The emotional component is way stronger than facts alone. They offer a clear villain, a clear scapegoat. They tap into identity, not data. And they use familiar tactics, so oversimplification, scapegoating, repetition. The same thing is happening with restoration laws. I've tracked social media content, especially on YouTube, Telegram, Twitter, when it was still a little bit more reliable than now. And that claims rewilding projects will displace farmers, that conversation zones are part of an elite land grab, or that biodiversity monitoring is a step towards digital surveillance. The result is always outright ejection or rejections. Sometimes it's just confusion. And this is even more dangerous because sometimes it's just enough doubt to stall support, delay implementation, or push community away from engagement. So that's why I mentioned the role of pre-banking, not reacting to disinformation after it is spread, but explaining in advance the different components that characterize that specific form of disinformation. So moving to institutional communication, disinformation spreads fast, but one reason is that our own communication often arrives too late and lands too flat. And this is a characteristic of many types of top-down communication efforts. During my time at the Joint Research Center, I work on the Green Deal communication and on the Green Deal progress report. a project that brought together experts from the commission, from different universities, different research centers, to show what has been achieved and what still needed to work. Biodiversity, well, was essential, but it was often one of the hardest topics to communicate. Why? Because we tend to present it one of two ways. So what it means, either through abstract numbers, so target reach, percentage gains, or through language that feels distant from daily life. It's like if you ask ChatGPT to write something just by specifying, make it personal, the result that you're going to get is something that is incredibly far from that. So terms like ecosystem services, nature-based solution, carbon-rich soils, these of course are useful in policy, but they don't connect to your audience, they don't connect emotionally. In some cases, the message gets lost. In other, it gets hijacked. For example, when the EU restoration law was proposed, the technical framing left space for actors to fill the gap with fear. Let's say they're coming for our land, they'll flood your fields for wetlands, and so on. I saw a different and quite successful dynamic when, for example, I work on with the Director General for Agriculture, and they started to really change their communication in order to include in the conversation farmers. So there was this attempt that was the Rural Pact magazine, a publication or a series of publications that were asking, including and interrogating, analyzing the perception of farmers regarding real life problems. And so we featured stories from communities restoring forests, rivers, coastal areas. And what made these stories work wasn't just the science. Of course, it was based on science. Of course, we were including all the data, all the right references, but it was the connection. A mayor who talked about bringing a dried up stream back to life. A farmer who found new biodiversity on her land after switching methods. We're talking about people. We're talking about their own solution, their own problems. And these stories didn't simplify reality, but they grounded it. They made it visible and personal. So the main point of all of this is that it's not enough clarity. We also need relatability. We need to show biodiversity not just as something to protect, but as something people already know in landscape, species, traditions, and future they care about. Last point is an engagement. Not just inviting people to comment on a finished plan, but involving them in defining what protection and restoration mean from the start. I come from the south of Italy, and I work on different projects that involve that part of my country. And so an initiative I found quite relevant was the Green Deal going local, meaning trying to transform a top-down approach in something that includes citizen engagement. A local green community across 9 small towns in the Ionic Adriatic area. These were not wealthy. They didn't have high capacity to involve in big sustainability projects, but they had something else. People who were deeply connected to the place. So we didn't just present a sustainability strategy. We ran working groups where residents help priorities action. So reforestation, wetland recovery, sustainable tourism. They didn't always agree because it was strange. Because of course, if you're used to a certain environment, you tend to be more risk adverse. Of course, there were tension, especially around land use, but they stayed in the room because they were included in the conversation and the final decision. And when they saw their words reflected in the plan, that changed something. They started to say our project, not theirs. And I've seen this pattern in many different contexts, and I think that is the only one that actually can work if it is for biodiversity, but in general for sustainability, we have to include people in the conversation and in the practical action. In ecosystem governance, ownership matters, not just buying. When people feel excluded, even good policies fail. So my conclusion, we can't manage ecosystem effectively if we are losing the narrative. We can restore biodiversity if we isolate in technical language, and we can build trust if people don't see themselves in the process. Ecological disinformation, thrives in silence and disconnection. Our response has to be the opposite: clear, grounded, and participatory. And that's all.
Thank you, Stefano. Thank you very much. And thank you for underlining also the role of participation. I think that's also important. I was really impressed when you were saying at a certain point the project was starting to be from their project to our project, no? And so that's a very meaningful example, in my opinion. So before going ahead with the rest of the speaker, I want to ask maybe if there are some question and or let's say comments or intervention that you want to address to Barbara and Stefano. We can have just a little quick question answer or interaction if there are any. Okay, even though if there are any comments or any intervention, we can go ahead. And at this point, I want to give the floor to the co-organizer of this event, that is Eric Amedia Co from Giving Life to Nature Volunteers, Ghana. Eric, you are here with us. I don't know if you can be able to speak. Eric, are you there? Hello? Okay, maybe in the meanwhile that Eric is getting the possibility to intervene, I want to go now to the next speaker of the panel, that is Evelyn Choco. Also, she's collaborating with the Giving Life to Nature volunteers. And I kindly ask Evelyn to join the stage. Thank you very much for being with us. Evelyn, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Ah, yes, okay. Eric, please. Floor to you.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Domenico. I'm very glad to join you at this moment. My network is not okay, but I will talk about ecosystem management in Ghana. Ghana is a home to, first of all, I'm from Giving Life Nature Volunteer, and I am also a project coordinator for the same organization. I will talk about Ghana ecosystem management, what what are the opportunity and what are the problems we are facing in our country. Ghana is a home to rich variety of ecosystem ranging from coastal wetland and savanna to tropical rainfall highland habitat. This ecosystem support a wide range of biodiversity and provide essential services such as, clean water, fertile soil, and climate regulation, and livelihood for millions of people in Ghana. However, threats such as deforestation, illegal mining, and urban expansion and climate change are putting increasing pressure on this natural system. In fact, Ghana, in this recent year, for the past 8 years, Ghana will go through a very big problem towards illegal mining in our forests and our rivers and so many places that is affecting the ecosystem. The ecosystem in Ghana, therefore, is crucial, not only for conservation biodiversity, but also protecting human well-being and ensure long-term sustainability. But what our government is doing for the past, they were not putting pressure on people not to expand their building in our community. There are a lot of places in Ghana that are conserved, but now as we are speaking, so many people are encroaching in those areas and it's affecting the ecosystem. So I will end up by saying protecting ecosystem is not just an environmental issue. It is a social and economic priority. The choice we make today will determine the quality of life for future generations, the survival of Ghana natural heritage. So I'll end it here and then give the floor to Evelyn. Jesus Christ. I am off.
Thank you, Eric. Sorry. Evelyn, I don't know if you're there. Evelyn, yeah,
Please, can
please.
you hear me?
Yeah, very low, but if you can speak louder, please.
All right.
Oh,
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Evelyn Esi Shushu, and I come from Ghana. I have a first degree in religious studies and business administration, which I had in Valley View University. I have a master's degree in health services administration, MBA, from the University of Ghana. And then I'm currently doing an MCOM, which is MPhil in the University of Cape Coast. And I want to talk about ecosystem in general and a little bit about Ghana because I come from Ghana. Ecosystem is a new holistic approach to managing natural resources. It combines scientific knowledge of ecological relationships with the complex socio-economic and political values, aiming for the long-term sustainability of an area. The problem is that human needs and activities and population growth have stressed ecosystems and depleted natural resources over the years. Traditional methods of managing natural resources have yielded unsatisfactory results, often prioritizing short-term yield and economic gains rather than long-term sustainability. This and advances in scientific understanding of ecosystem has led to the development of new management strategies. In current times, it is expected that habitats and species which are components of ecosystems will be restored to health so that social and environmental systems will be productive and resilient in the face of ongoing and foreseen problems. But now, when we come to ecosystem in general, let's take the sun, the water, the air that we breathe, soil, the nutrients, microorganisms, wild carnivores, wild herbivores, wild plants, lions, animals here and there. We can see that grass and woodland brush, which is grazed by a variety of animals, which in turn are preyed upon by the top predators. Such as dung, three trophic levels in the food web are recycled by decomposers. So you can see that when we start from the land, we have microorganisms, and then the animals also prey on them, and other higher animals also prey on those animals, and then it ends up in destruction here and there. So this is a representation of the same system, but heavily impacted by introduction of extensive agriculture. At the tropic level of plants, domesticated and agricultural crops such as maize, millet, potatoes, and other crops have been introduced. Domesticated crops such as domesticated stock such as cattle and goats have been introduced, and man now plays on much more important role as a consumer of the plant crops. When we come to Ghana, it is against this background that West African food systems resilience was developed. It is particularly important for Ghana's food and nutrition security due to the uncertain nature and severity of COVID-19 impact across the agricultural value chain. The government of Ghana, through the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, in collaboration with ECOWAS and the World Bank, will participate in the FSRPU under the World Bank multi-phase program approach. Galamsey is a word in Ghana that everybody knows. It is a Ghanaian jargon from the phrase gather and sell, coined from how gold was mined with simple tools by natives and and sold afterwards. Despite its socioeconomic benefits, a significant upstream of galamsey has been widely associated with significant environmental impacts such as the destruction of aquatic ecosystems and the degradation of ecosystem services. Galamsey or illegal mining in Ghana has severely impacted the nation's ecosystem management by causing widespread deforestation, water pollution, and soil degradation. These activities disrupt habitats, contaminate water resources with toxic chemicals, and render agricultural lands unstable and unusable. Ultimately, it strengthens Ghana's natural resources and long-term sustainability. So we have to try as much as possible to be careful of how we use our lands, our crops, in the way that it will not affect negatively our lives and the life of our children and our generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Thank you also for giving your experience and also your point of view, also from the Ghana context. Thank you also very much, Eric, for bringing up this point of view. It's important, and I want really to thank Eric, that is a long time colleague, a long time collaborator that. We can synergize among different realities, as we did with the Climate Social Forum and giving to NATO volunteers. And so, properly talking about network and properly talking about collaboration, now I want to give the floor to the last speaker, that is Josie. Hi, Josie, are you there? Are you able to speak? Hello?
Hi everyone.
Hi, Jocelyn Mirashi. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining our discussion today. Jocelyn is a climate activist that has also an interesting experience on the way on how she arrived to the climate activist. Now it's like bringing important position also into the climate environment. So I give the floor to Jocelyn to introduce herself and also to bring her point of view on the discussion on ecosystem management and on the role of civil society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jocelyn Mirashi. I am a former beauty queen from Tanzania, now a climate advocate, but also a water aid youth leader. And basically, one of the things that I advocate for, I think most of what I'll be saying is just adding on onto what Barbara has been saying, because that is pretty much what I advocate for. And that is youth inclusion, especially in decision-making spaces, because as you know, almost 70, if I'm not mistaken, almost 70%, 2 billion of the Earth's population is people under the age of 35. So youth make up most of the population in the world, and it is only fair that we are being included in spaces where negotiations are made on behalf of us, who is the majority. Um, that's what I'm saying. Barbara pretty much said everything that I wanted to say. And coming from a country that's in the global south and also a third world country, there could be so many barriers as to why youth from this part of the world cannot be involved or cannot attend in these negotiations or these meetings. So what I advocate for or what I do is to bring what we get from these meetings, the few of us that can attend these meetings. What I always advocate for example, we have in my country, we have been initiating youth from COP28. We have been initiating pre-youth COP28, pre COP29, and hopefully this year use pre-COP 30, where we gather youth from different communities who are in the front lines of climate change, and we get to know what they're really going through, their challenges, but not only their challenges, but also their ideas to combat climate change. And this, I think, can be really helpful because we get to hear from the grassroots themselves, people who are in the front line of climate change. Yeah, so for now, I think I'll stop there. But I think one of the things that governments and civil societies need to know is that youth are at the front lines of climate change. So it is only fair to include them in negotiations, and including them means finding ways where these all the terms, the negotiations, or even maybe something like free causes can be given to you, so that what is being discussed in these meetings is information that is out there in a way that every youth can access the information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for your words. And yes, we reiterate this point. I want also to tell that as Climate Social Forum, we are creating a capacity building hub properly to foster and promote knowledge among youth, among climate activists on the climate action, but also on negotiation. We are preparing a particular course on for climate negotiator. So thank you very much for fostering this point. Now, thank you very much to all the speakers, because from them we had a diverse perspective on the role of engagement of civil society for ecosystem management. Now the floor to you, to the people that decide to attend this event. Thank you very much, first of all, and let's engage a brief discussion. If you want to intervene, please feel free to raise your hand and open your microphone to intervene. Don't be shy. It's important that we have also this interaction. So thank you very much, and the floor to you. Amina, please, floor is yours.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hello, hi. Hello, how are you? Thank you, first of all, for such an insightful discussion. I am Amna Khan from Pakistan, and I have a very insightful question if you want to answer. That we have faced the devastating floods, 2022 floods that are recently experiencing. Intense monsoon impacts, clear signs of escalating climate vulnerability in the global south. So my question here is that how can governments and private institutions and civil society can collaboratively build long-term climate resilient ecosystem frameworks that can reflect the justice and urgency needed for frontline nation state like ours? Thank you.
Thank you, Mina. I don't know if any of the speakers wants to respond. So just to recap, as I understand, the question of Amina is if we consider floods, no, floods can be extreme events, how we can engage, for example, the civil society in managing also these extreme events that are for sure a cause of climate crisis. So, sorry, an effect of climate crisis. Tigis, please.
Hello.
Hi, hi.
Yes, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for all the insightful reflections from the panel. My name is Tigist Ndashau, and I'm a consultant in climate action policy advocacy, and I serve as the Global Engagements Officer for Climate Social Forum. just to reflect on some of the points that was raised and the question just raised by Amina, I think the three factors are most important here. One is capacities, building capacities of to cope with climate shock in terms of like the consequences with the social, economic, and all the impacts of climate change. That's one capacities, and the next is technology transfer, having in place the really needed innovative technologies that would enable communities. But then when we speak up about technologies, like there is nothing that would that one size fits all, but everything needs to be contextualized to the different contexts of each country. And even we know that the ecosystems even differ within one country with localities. So it has to be context specific that can address the needs of the community. And well, the other important thing is finance. So without resources being in place, without finance being in place, we won't be able to make sure that the interventions are cascaded down to the communities that are needed. So with this also, we need to have the capacity to put through bankable proposals for the various donors like the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund, and other multilateral development bank funding agencies. So it's it all needs a holistic approach. Because one without the other won't do. So we need to focus on having a holistic approach in place. And also, as has been mentioned earlier, the push for the youth engagement. Also, we need also to bring in the gender perspective, because it's not only youth, but then there are special needs of women, people with disabilities, elderly, with all that stratification of the society. So we need to have that holistic approach. Thank you. I hope you have been able to hear me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tish. Yes, we hear you. So thank you very much for also bringing on the floor the holistic approach. I very concur. I see Sheikh Tijan. So Sheikh, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. This is a very substantial gathering, and we have learned so much about it. And I think it's important for us to take note of what we have learned so far. And what I want to say is, as a youth from West Africa, especially Gambian, I think it's very important we embark on climate changing activities, especially, trying to see the role of the public, the private, and the civil society organizations gathering, coming together to find solutions to climate change. I think it's very important that we have some seconds at the end of this, and we continue to be those fighters. As one of the presenters said, the youth should be the people that are piloting these initiatives, that we should be the forefront, because we are most vulnerable to this climate change, or we are most vulnerable to these hazardous climate activities. And at the end of the day, we are the people who are going to suffer the consequences. And most of the time, you see that we are the least contributors to all these climate problems, or all these climate change activities. So, especially the poor side of Africa, we are most of the time the recipients of all these problems, that is drought and climate change. You count them, the list goes on. So I think it's high time you, like, people trying to connect all these things together. pumped in. Most of the time we have initiative. Me, Pashe, I run the environmental association. I'm a co-founder of one. So I have so many initiatives, but then you find it difficult to fund all these things. And I think the UNDP climate action and all these UN climate related activities or projects should start and steer funding and change direction to the West African nations. And I think that's what I have to say. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheikh. I don't know if any also of the speaker want to eventually revert into this, we can say, point, at this point of the discussion. I see Evelyn, Josie, if you want to also say reply to the last comments.
Yeah, please, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
Climate change has become a natural phenomenon, and it is left with we, the human beings, to find ways and means from avoiding us being affected negatively by uh, the disasters that come with them. So my contribution is that we need technological innovations in our countries. We can build flood barriers, and then systems that integrate with citywide flood monitoring systems to respond to the rising water levels. And then secondly, we can do smart drainage systems to monitor and control water flow in real time, detecting blockages. And then second topic is heading is infrastructure and design. We can build, that's a long term thing, we can build floating homes designed to raise the fall and fall with water levels, minimizing flood damage. That is for the government, because as citizens, that's too big for us. So the government can also do that. And then green roofs to absorb rainwater, reducing runoff and providing insulation. And then floodable parts temporarily hold water from during extreme weather events, reducing pressure on drainage systems. And then we also have to do land management and policy to sustain urban planning, the land preservation, and climate resilience policies that will help the country plan towards these disasters. We also have to engage the community to foster awareness and cooperation in flood prevention efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. I don't know if there are other comments. In the meanwhile, I will reach Josie and Richard. So Josie first.
Thank you very much. I wanted to add on what Evelyn was saying, but on my side, I will speak more on youth. You know, at times we don't need to rely on government or civil society, because since we are the ones at the front lines of climate change, and we know our ecosystems and our communities better, because sometimes the solutions being brought about by governments and other bodies involved may not accurately work for our communities. So one of the things I would advise youth who are into climate activism and climate advocacy to be on the front lines and come up with solutions that maybe now these solutions can be given to the government and other bodies involved to implement, because like I said, we are the ones at the front lines of climate change, so we know what we experience, how much effect it has in our lives and livelihoods, and also the solutions which we can use to combat climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josie. And yes, I couple this with the issue of technological solution. I think that the climate action need now to turn from we can say words and of course messages to something more concrete like project implementation. I give the floor now to Richard. Richard, thank you very much for joining our session. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks so much indeed, Domenico. I think actually it's probably a question more for Stefano, who's moved on, but I think that it will impinge upon everybody here. And that is, I'm sort of wondering how easy or challenging it is for the younger generation to get their views across, particularly at major events. And therefore, sort of what you think is needed and what might be being provided in terms of improving people's public speaking skills, presentation skills, honing in on what is the message. I mean, a lot of people at these conferences who've been around for some time and have a lot of experience, and therefore will be tempted to be pretty dismissive of people who've only just appeared on the scene. So I think the challenge for the youth is to become a hero from zero, as it were, and then produce some stuff which is really credible, whether that's in terms of sort of discussion papers or reports, which are from which have got lots of comments in from credible sources. All that I think will really help the youth voice. And the really important thing about this is that it's that this generation, the younger generation, which is really going to be the one that suffers from this and has to turn it around. Because I mean, let's face it, if we don't make this transition, we are all in really serious trouble. And there's an awful lot of older voices in certain countries which are backtracking on projects which would be very good to help solve the planetary crises, and they're just not doing it, and youth just hasn't got enough influence.
Thank you very much, Richard. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important also to have like a meaningful engagement or in this sense. And there are several also guidelines that now are like being released in several contexts about meaningful engagement of youth and civil society and so on. Just to tell also that as a Climate Social Forum, we are trying to use a methodology, for example, for engagement, that is the Talanoa dialogue, that several times we use in our events, in our sessions. And I agree also with you that a lot of us are now are a lot into this, you can say, environment of climate action. But also, I take the chance to say, is even here in our approach on climate action, we have to be more pragmatic, as Josie and Evelyn was suggesting. And this is also an element that we need to consider, even here in this event. The role of civil society is important. Just to tell when maybe government are not so committed or not so ambitious in climate action, civil society is very active and prompt to foster this challenge that you have to face. So it's important also to have meaningful engagement practices and methodologies. So unfortunately, the time for our event is gonna end. I don't know if there are last comment or last consideration. We can take one or two still. Maybe someone that has not intervened before. If not, maybe I will ask Eric. I don't know if you can talk, if you want to say a few closing remarks for this session, and then I will concur on that. Eric, I don't know if you're there. Okay, in the meanwhile, I will say my closing remark. Thank you very much, everyone, to attend this meeting. Thank you to the colleagues of Giving Live to Nature volunteers, because such long collaboration has brought really to like a common commitment, and to session like these ones that has been very, in my opinion, fruitful and insightful. I remember that the session is recorded and also live stream. I sent to you the YouTube link on the Climate Social Forum channel that you can use eventually to see again, to share also into your network and so on. For any collaboration, do not hesitate to visit our website. Now I will share one moment the website on the screen. So you can find us at climatesocialforum.com, and also I share into the chat our email as well. I will share now the Giving Live to Nature volunteers Facebook page, and so eventually you can reach us on even on Facebook. Of course, we will share all these detail also into like an email that we are gonna send to the participant. And moreover, to the participant, we will provide a certificate of attendance. Also to demonstrate and to give value of your time that you share with us. So just one second. Okay, so this is the Facebook page of Gili Navo, and you can find here all the activities that Gili Navo is doing in Ghana, like some initiative that also we did together, and so explore our social media and media channels to know more about us. And thank you very much to everyone for attending, and have a nice rest of the day. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.